But with over 1,200 episodes of Pokemon, there's only one where the truth that Pokemon are food is revealed. Season 1, episode 33 shows cooked Magikarp. This episode was more or less scrubbed, and the theme was not revisited in other episodes. At least Palworld is honest, huh? Welcome to Deep Thoughts While Gaming. I'm Chris Chappell. Palworld, a game you've likely at least heard of by now, was just released on Steam and has already broken into being one of only 2 games on the platform to ever have over 2 million concurrent users, selling over 8 million copies in the first week, and garnering quite a bit of attention. But what is it? Is it a children's game with cuddly friends to call your own? Is it a parody made for us adults to take out our frustrations on said cute, cuddly friends? Or is it perhaps something completely new? For a game that has had a series of controversies already, we can generally narrow them all down to the player base being a bit confused. Not in terms of the concept of the game, a monster hunting game with base building mechanics. Simple enough. But in terms of what the game is trying to be past that. In elements such as the overall tone of the game and its seeming willingness to lean heavily on at least stylistic choices from other games. Upon seeing your first trailer, the art styles of the pals will instantly have you understand why people call it Pokemon with guns. The main selling points of the game being the pals that you discover around the world and the extensive weaponry that both you and they can operate. However, you may be surprised to find out that the gameplay feels more like if Ark, Fortnight, and Monster Hunter had a baby, and that baby grew up to have an old school perspective on human rights. With just a bit of slavery required to build and operate your gun factories, at least one unnecessarily sexy pal, and the ability to breed your pals and feast upon their children. You'll find pretty quickly that the game deals with some strangely PG-13 themes, and that the cute little game you expected has strangely sinister undertones, past the guns even. Meanwhile, some people target the creators of Palworld as straight-up plagiarists, citing extreme similarities between the 3D models in Palworld and Pokemon. Others view the game as a hatchet job of borrowed assets and ideas, its charm coming from how ridiculous mixing these elements together ultimately feels. The character models and actions, for example, including gliding and mineral gathering, may eerily feel like someone ported a Fortnite character over to your game, while the boss battles and pal fights are extremely reminiscent of Monster Hunter. Is Palworld a satire? A parody? A joke? Or something more important than we originally made it out to be? It doesn't market itself as a serious game, but putting aside the typical themes of imprisonment applicable to Pokemon that we all know and love, it's at least a little unexpected to find out you can enslave humans with nothing more than a small disclaimer stating this is unethical. It's a strange mix of adult themes with childlike wonder. Yes, you have a gun, and you're more or less hunting exotic animals. However, after killing their herd and beating a few into newfound friendships, you can pat them on the head and feed them, except for your human slaves who, like every other pal in the game, have their own special petting animations, which we can't possibly show on YouTube, right? I'm not sure what the rules are anymore. Not only that, but there's nods at interspecies mating, the possibility to farm and eat the babies of your pals, and even commit the unthinkable and eat your human slaves. The game isn't totally immoral though, as all humans in the game are genderless, as modern media would have you believe. So it doesn't let you breed them together, ruining any potential plans of factory farming humans for their caviar. Everybody has to draw a line sometime, and this game sort of tried its best to draw something. That being said, it's still an alpha, so the possibility of there not being a line is still there. Unless that is, if the creators of this game envisioned their target market differently. Is it really the game's fault that we went in with expectations? Perhaps if this game wasn't tied to Pokemon through its art style, the addition of these seemingly dark themes wouldn't be so strange. Is it possible that the art style is the only reason anyone accuses this game of being immoral? If the setting was the Jurassic World of Ark, or the Wastelands of Rust, would we really even feel the need to mention these fun little additions to the game? Who said Palworld had to be a tame and happy place? The tone of the game may certainly confuse you at times, however, when it comes to Pokemon with guns, it's kind of what people wanted anyways. Just maybe not in all the ways they thought. But how closely does Palworld actually resemble Pokemon from a technical perspective? The answer, aside from the actual look of the pals, not at all. That being said, you'll have moments playing the game where the similarities between some of your pals and some Pokemon you may know are almost uncanny. The most interesting work done on comparing these similarities has been done by some of the 3D graphic designers of the internet, who, after comparing the underlying mesh structures of the 3D characters, generally feel that the similarities are also too extreme to be happenstance. This has led to what at this point is still a rumor, that the developers used AI to help develop the pals. However, this is countered by the fact that a large number of these pals appeared in marketing material before AI became usable for the developers. Of course, the Pokemon Company hasn't said anything yet, and this game has been floating around for a while now. It seems if they were cutting it too close, there would be conflict brewing already. But only time will tell, as many are still of the opinion that the Pokemon Company will take some kind of action. Furthermore, the game certainly takes aspects that work in other games and puts them together. Sure, taking tried and tested concepts and implementing them is one thing, but from the menus, to the way your character moves, to the way plants drop items, so many things at this point in the game will have you wondering, where have I seen this? Charles Caleb Colton coined the well-known phrase, imitation is the sincerest form of flattery. And this possibly applies here. The movement in the game is fluid, and the elements that we see from Ark, Monster Hunter, and Fortnight are ultimately done well. Arguably, even better at times than these influences have done. So you'll end up enjoying a bit of nostalgia while also thoroughly enjoying this recreation of it, if you can appreciate the funny similarities you may encounter. It wouldn't be fair to call Palworld a satire, as it isn't obvious what it would actually be satirizing. It also wouldn't seem completely right to call it a parody, as if you throw out the idea that the game is existentially tied to Pokemon, it isn't actually parodying anything. The most we can do is call it a game, with possibly a strange sense of humor. Yet I'd go so far as to say it just might be a bit more than that. Being one of the most popular games ever released on Steam, what does it mean that so many of the conversations surrounding the game involve where the game got its influence from? Does it even matter? According to the reviews and current ratings of the game, apparently not. For all my talk of what Palworld is and what elements went into making it, for all the haters and conspiracy theorists, the majority of people ultimately don't care and enjoy the game anyways, possibly upsetting the more elitist members of the community who prefer for all assets to be created from scratch. Now, those people are allowed to have their opinions, for now, but if we consider the reality of what it takes to make a video game today, we can probably assume we'll be seeing more of this sort of patchwork of concepts, materials, and ideas. It's never been easier to share information, mine data, and find open source resources. And it's becoming easier and easier for people to get into game development. One of the benefits of this is more games being created. One of the potential downsides is that there's a natural inclination to lean into all of the material that already exists, instead of starting from scratch. Proponents of AI may say that this solves the problem, that with AI, our code will always be different. However, this isn't the case, as large language models ultimately operate based on the material they are trained on, meaning they are trained on what already exists. Understanding this, you can also have a clearer idea of why AI has been brought up as a potential defense and attack in relation to the similarities in the 3D mesh structures of the pals. Ultimately, it comes down to taste. Andy Warhol, an artist known for his pop art style, and specifically his art piece, Campbell's Soup Can, dealt with similar criticisms in his time. Some believe that the modifications he did to his work were enough for it to be considered new and interesting, whereas others couldn't see past the soup can they had in their kitchen. But regardless, Warhol was one of the first artists to experiment with a medium that borrowed so heavily from its source material, that the idea of what art was had to be questioned and ultimately changed. In the 90s, sampling was the controversy. Music artists taking short bits of other people's music and crafting it into something entirely new. The Beastie Boys' Paul's Boutique being a prime example, an album that would be legally impossible to make today. NFTs provide a more recent example of the same idea. The annoyance people have with the art form is that they don't believe enough work was done to call it as such. But regardless of how you personally feel about games, art, and quite frankly, everything else being easier to make nowadays than it used to be, it's a trend that probably won't be stopping. We can expect more recycled concepts to pop up in new games as the code to implement them becomes accessible to the community online. We can expect attribution to become less and less important, much like citations have become less important in the age of YouTube. And overall, especially with the success of Palworld, we can expect more games to encompass elements we've seen before, with their own personal twist, without it being seen as a bad thing. Thank you for watching Deep Thoughts While Gaming. And remember, as I always famously and originally say, 7 years ago, I have a dream we're gonna need a bigger boat, clever girl, to move to the rear of the Mega Zeppelin. And if you want more original content like that, hit that join button. You'll get exclusive emojis, a Discord server, live streams, videos, all created by the finest AI algorithms ripping off your actual dreams. You really should have read Google's terms of service.